Stampers, welcome to the craft room. Today I want to show you another way to make a great tile magnet using your crystal effects and also your embossing powder. So let's get started. We're going to start with a plain white tile. This is just a 2" by 2" tile. You can use ceramic or porcelain, either one will work. You're also going to need your Versa marker and some gold embossing powder. We're going to begin by taking our embossing buddy and just wiping off the tile so that the embossing powder does not stick to places we don't want it to stick. And then you're going to take your Versa marker. I'm going to use the brush tip side, and you can draw whatever pattern you like. And I'm just going to make a checkerboard pattern, so I'm drawing lines. This will be very hard to see since your Versa marker is a clear ink, but I'm just drawing 4 lines going in one direction, then I'm turning the tile and I'm going to draw 4 lines going in the opposite direction, again making a checkerboard pattern. And then we're going to bring over our gold embossing powder. I like to keep it contained in this container, and we're just going to cover it with the embossing powder. And then you're just going to tap it off just like you would if you were embossing on a piece of cardstock. The next thing we're going to do is, just like we do with a piece of paper, we're going to heat emboss, and I'm actually just going to place my tile onto a tile to absorb some of the heat. And we're going to heat this until all of your lines are embossed. You may notice that it takes a little bit longer for your tile to heat up and therefore for your embossing powder to heat up. That's okay, just be patient. It will take a little bit longer than when you heat emboss on paper or cardstock. Okay, and I just want to give you a warning here, because just like it took this tile a while to heat up to be able to melt that embossing powder, it takes it a while to cool down. So you do not want to touch this tile right away. It retains heat, so it will be incredibly hot right now. You just want to walk away and give it a chance to cool down before going and touching it. And you can kind of wave your hand over the tile and you'll actually feel the heat. So wait until that cools down a bit, which is what I'm going to do now, before you actually go ahead and do anything further on this project. Okay, and now my tile is cool to the touch. It took about 5 minutes or so. It might take 5 to 10 minutes, but it shouldn't take much longer than that. The next thing that we're going to need is crystal effects. I'm also going to use a little yogurt lid as my palette, and I'm also going to bring in a thin brush. We're also going to need colors of your choice. I'm using rose red ink and poppy parade ink. And what we're going to do is actually paint in these little squares. And you can use as many different colors as you want. You're going to put a blob of crystal effects onto your palette, and then you're going to take the color of your choice. You shouldn't need a lot of ink. I'm just going to do 1 drip of ink here, and just going to stir that together with a little wooden skewer. So this is my rose red color. And I'm going to work with that first, and then I'll come back and make the second color, because the crystal effects dries pretty quickly, so you don't want the other color to be dry by the time you come back to paint with it. So let's go ahead and just paint these little squares. What's nice about the embossing powder is it actually will do a pretty good job of holding the ink in place, or sorry, the crystal effects in place, so that you won't go over the edges too much. And you can kind of dab it in here or paint it in. I like dabbing. It goes on just a little bit thicker and gives me a little bit more color. And I'm going to go ahead and do every other square. Again, it would be really fun to just take different colors and paint each square a different color. And if you go over the embossing at all, at this point you could just take your nail and clean that right off, because your crystal effects is still nice and wet. Okay, and so I'm done with my first color, so we're just going to rinse off our brush. So now we're ready to make the second color, so I'm just going to add some crystal effects. I'm going to use a little bit less this time than last time, since I seem to have a lot left over. And I'm going to add just a dot of Poppy Parade and mix that up. I don't know why I'm in kind of a red and orange mood right now. Let's get that nice and mixed. These may be a lot closer in color than I anticipated, but we'll just see what happens. And actually, as I mix that, that seems really close in color to me, even though I know it will dry a little bit more translucent. So I'm going to try a different color. Instead, I'm going to go with Pretty in Pink, and we'll see what happens with that. So let me mix up a little bit of that. And that seems a bit lighter. That might be really nice. And we'll work with that color. So again, just going to pick up a bunch of that on my brush and dot it onto the tile. Okay, now I have both of my colors on there. At this point you've got a number of options. You can either just go ahead and let this dry, or prior to it drying, remember Crystal Effects isn't just a glazing material. It also can act as a glue, so like I did on this tile here, I actually just placed some beads down while it was still wet. Or you can let it dry, and then once it's dry, come back in and add your beads and things later. So I'm going to add a few beads now while my light pink is still wet, so let me grab some beads. So I just have some plain light pink beads here. They're seed beads, and I'm just going to place one in each of the Pretty in Pink squares. And at this point too, if I feel like I want to add a little bit more crystal effects to those squares, I can, if I'm concerned that my beads won't stick. Okay, the last thing we need to do is just add our magnet, and obviously you want to wait until this is completely dry before you turn it over and start adding anything. But let me just show you on the back of this one. I added a 3/4 inch ceramic magnet. I attached it using Crystal Effects, so you just put some Crystal Effects onto your magnet and just put it down on the back of your tile. The last thing you might want to add is a felt backing to your magnet. That way it won't scratch the surface that you're using it on. I just took some stiff felt and ran it through the Big Shot with the Fun Flowers die. On the Fun Flowers die there actually is a 3/4 inch circle, so that's really nice. And to add your circle, you can just again use some Crystal Effects, put it on the back of your magnet, and then just adhere your felt circle down, and that'll be just fine, and it will dry without a problem. So there you have it, a really simple way to make a heat embossed tile magnet. Let me just share with you this one as well. I added different beads to each one of the squares and then some tiny little seed beads here. You could add rocks or shells, and again, once it's dry, you could add additional Crystal Effects to add the embellishments of your choice. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to make this project, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon here in the craft room.